Hello everyone. My name is Elise. Welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing so good today. We are very backlit right now, but hopefully you can still see me okay. This is the only spot I can film at the moment because we are rearranging a bunch of the closets in our house and stuff is everywhere. So this is going to be the backdrop for today. Hopefully it works for you. And I'm very excited because we're doing my book haul revisit for the month of November. So basically we're looking at the books that I bought in November of 2022, since that was the only other year that I was on BookTube and I have a haul for. And we're going to be looking through to see if I have read the books that I bought that month or not. This is mainly for me, one, to see what I've read, because I really do want to be reading the books that I'm buying. It's a good way for me to go back and say like, okay, if I haven't read these, like I need to really get on it and remind myself of the books that are still on my TBR. So that's the first thing that we're going to be determining. Have I read it or have I not? Then I will also give you a very short synopsis of the book, hopefully around 1 to 2 sentences about the book in general, but then I'll also try and chat about why I bought it, if I can remember why I bought it or why I was interested. And then also at the end of the video, I will be picking one of the unread books to put on my TBR for December, and it's a must read for me for December. So far, I have always followed through as long as I've been doing the book haul revisit videos and read the book that I picked out. So here's hoping that I continue that trend. I do happen to know, because I've already looked through the books, I could gather what I need, that I did not do well this month. I have not read the vast majority of these books. I've only read 2, so spoiler, only read 2. And as has been historically in these videos, you can tell very easily the ones that I have not read because they will be the ones I'm lifting up because I've pulled them off of my TBR shelves. My read books are much harder to get to for me. They're in our basement and I'm not going to get them, at least for now, until I can have them displayed better, but we don't have room. So that's going to be the way that you can tell I haven't read them. I will be lifting them up. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this mildly shameful book haul because I have not read most of these books. We're going to go in the order that I hauled them originally. The first book we have is Hugs and Cuddles. This is by Joao Gilberto Noel, and it's translated by Edgar Garbeletto. It's sideways on there. And I think this is translated from the Portuguese, but let me just double check because I'm pretty sure the author is Brazilian. Yes, it's translated from the Brazilian Portuguese. It's a very small book. This is a 2 lines press book. Sometimes they come out with these very small editions. There's actually going to be a book in my book haul, which is going to be the next video coming out on my channel, I think. That is another 2 lines press book that is the same like pocket size edition. This one I picked up actually outside of the festival. So I picked this up at Queen Anne Book Company, which I talk about very often. It's my favorite local indie, and they have a translated literature section. Whenever I go in, I always browse that section, and this was the one of the ones that I found there that I had not heard about, but sounded very interesting. And this book follows an unnamed narrator who has decided to leave his traditional life behind and go back and reconnect with someone from his childhood, another man who he had some type of intimate encounter with when he was younger, but they never really explored it beyond that. So he's coming back to see if they can have a relationship, I think, again. I do believe that outside of their relationship, there are lots of things happening in the world around them, a lot of unrest. I think there might even be a plague going on. So not sure how all of that will integrate, but I really like the premise of him kind of reconnecting with an older version of himself and older desires and seeing if he can make that work as a life in his older age. I appreciate that premise immensely and really interested to get to this one. It is pretty thick and it's got small font. That is like a killer for me. If it has really small font, I put off reading it. So I might need an extra little push to get this going. So that is the first one. Have not read it. Next up, we have Weasels in the Attic. This is by Hiroko Oyamada, and it's translated by David Boyd from the Japanese. This one I have read because it's not here, and it is a really short collection of 3 interlinked stories. And for me, the main takeaway thematically was infertility. So all of them have to do with infertility in some way. It follows a couple who is struggling with infertility as they are interacting with another couple that they're friends with while they're having a baby. It's got this dichotomy going on of a couple really struggling to have a baby and then a couple actively having a baby and seeing what that experience is like. This is my favorite of Oyamada's works that I've read thus far. I've also read The Factory and the Whole, and that's why I picked this book up. This was another one that I picked up at Queen Anne Book Company when it first came out as I was browsing their shelves. So have read this one, tick, excited that I've at least got this one off, even though it was a short one, and that's probably why I read it so quickly, but definitely enjoyed and would highly recommend. Next book we have is Morningside Heights. This is by Joshua Henkin, and it's published by Vintage, I think. Let me just double check. I'm pretty sure it's published by Vintage. Oh my gosh, where's the publisher? Yes, it's published by Vintage, which is Penguin. This is another one I got at Queen Anne Book Company when I went. It was in the staff recommendations section, which I always peruse as well, but I had never heard of this before, and I really have never heard of it since either. And I think that's partly why I haven't picked it up yet, is I've just heard nobody talk about this, but I specifically remember the reason why I picked it up is in the little note card of the staff recommendation, it said the word heartwarming, and heartwarming was a buzzword for me that I used to use a lot to pick up novels and things that I would read. But since then, I have sort of transitioned into reading dark stuff more consistently, which I don't mind, but I think at the time there was a part of me yearning for some of the old type of literature that I used to read, and heartwarming just got me. I am a sucker for the good side of humanity and wanted to pick this up. I honestly don't even remember what it's about outside of that. It says it takes place in New York City in the 1970s, and it follows a woman who falls in love and marries Spence Robb, who is her hotshot young Shakespeare professor. But 30 years later, something is wrong with Spence. And that's all I'm going to read. So that is Morningside Heights. Haven't heard anything else about it other than someone at Queen Anne Book Company recommended it, and I picked it up. So I do still definitely want to read this. I've thought about this a couple of months throughout the year of like, ooh, this might be a good pick for me. So I've definitely felt a pull towards it. So it might be a good book for me to pick up. So that is Morningside Heights, not read. The next book that we have, is a poetry collection. I do think I picked this up. I picked this up at Drink Books, which is another Seattle bookstore. They're independent bookstore and also a natural wine shop, and it is a really cool idea. And I picked up this poetry collection called Normal Distance. This is by Elisa Gabbert, and it's published by Soft Skull Press, which I have read from a good amount before, but I have never picked up their poetry, I don't believe. And I think the reason why I picked this up is it said that tonally it's chilling and funny, and I thought that was a really interesting combination, so that pretty much sold it in for me. I did also flick through to get a sense of some of the poems, and it does seem like it might be a good fit for me, so we'll see if this is going to be good or not. I definitely still want to read it, so this might be a good one for me to pick up because it's poetry. I'll probably read it a little bit more quickly than something else, and my December TBR is already pretty stacked, so this could definitely be a good option. And I do love the cover. It's also that like matte gel texture, which I love. So that is Normal Distance. Next up, we're getting to the Portland Book Festival books. So the first that we have here, it's at the bottom of the stack. I need to grab it. And that is Beasts of a Little Land by Juhea Kim. And this one is published by Echo, which is an imprint of HarperCollins. I try to say the imprints. I don't know if anybody else cares, but we should be informed about the publishers that we're reading from. And it's hard with some of the big ones because they have so many imprints. It's hard to keep track. But Echo is an imprint of HarperCollins. And this edition is signed. I got it signed while I was there. So there is the signature on the inside. And I went to a talk with Juhea Kim and Lydia Yuknavitch, which is going to be coming up in just a second. and their talk was really, really great. They both loved each other's books. I distinctly remember that, and that made the conversation much more enjoyable. And Juhea Kim had previously only written short stories. This is her first novel, and she talked about how in the publishing world, the novel is king. While she loves writing short stories, they don't sell well typically, and her publisher was basically like, you need to give us a novel. So this was her first attempt at a novel, and it is like an epic. It is a family saga that starts in 1917, and it follows a Korean family. I believe the first generation that it shows, it's like they have an interaction with a tiger that is very strange. I don't know if they're like saving a tiger or something like that. That's vaguely what I remember, and I know there's a tiger on the front, but she really sold it. I don't remember much more about it now, but I'm definitely still intrigued to read it, which is why I still have it. And this is pretty long. I don't know if this is going to be one that I pick, and I'm currently reading Pachinko, and I don't read a ton of big family sagas, so it might be too quick of succession for me to read multiple in a short time span. So I don't know if I'll pick this one, but definitely still interested. The cover is amazing, and yeah, was won over by the talk. And then we have Thrust, which is the other book from that talk by Lydia Yuknavitch, and this one is published by Riverhead Books, which is an imprint of Penguin. Lydia is really the reason I went to that talk originally. I was very interested in this book. I mean, look at this cover. It's insanely gorgeous. And this one has very little plot structure. So part of this is told by like a chorus of voices, and there isn't really a main character. There's one character who has a storyteller-like role, and they pop up at different points throughout the narrative, but there's not really a main character. There's not really a linear plot, and Lydia spoke about how that was very intentional. She wanted to see if she could write a novel that had none of the traditional elements of plot structure. And I think that's such a fascinating premise to start by. Her reading of this was also really interesting. It was from the beginning, and it was told by a chorus of voices. So in the beginning, I think there's like a body being built, and it's like the narration of like different parts coming together to build this body. Very fascinating. I definitely still want to get to it. This is another one where I've thought multiple months about putting it on my TBR. Has definitely been calling to me. So we'll see if I can get to this very soon. Oh, and I should say this one is also personally signed, and here is the signature, and it says "Be Oceans" in there, which goes with the book. All right, next book from the Portland Book Festival is Night of the Living Rez. This is by Morgan Tulty, and it's an interlinked short story collection published by Tin House, which is a publisher from Portland. And I always like picking up a Tin House book if I can while I'm at the festival. This one has since won a couple of awards. I'm pretty sure it won the Pen Award for whatever category it was listed in. It was listed in multiple categories. It won one of them, maybe the short story category. And this is set in a Native community in Maine that is an island, and Morgan Tulty is from there. And I know it deals with themes of substance abuse, and I've heard great things about it. Greg from Supposedly Fun is a big fan of this book, and this is another one that I definitely still want to get to. I think some of the darker subject matter has pulled me away at certain times of the year when I didn't feel like I was ready for it, but I still really want to get to this. I do think that there is a very high chance that I'm going to get to it in the next few months. I've also been thinking about trying to potentially do a reading vlog featuring lots of Indigenous authors, and this could be a good pick for that. So we shall see, but that is Night of the Living Rez, and I don't think I got this one signed. Oh, I did get this one signed. Never mind. There's the signature. And the last book that I picked up at the festival last year is Nightcrawling by Leila Mottley. This is published by Knopf, and this was everywhere. It was nominated for the Booker last year. and lots of people really enjoyed it. I think a lot of the buzz around this was also that Leila Mottley started writing this when she was 17 years old, and I think it got published when she was 19. So extremely young. She's the youngest person to ever be nominated for the Booker Prize. And it is about a young girl growing up in Oakland. It's based off a true story, who has needed to resort to nightcrawling, which is essentially sex work, in order to get by. And then the police take advantage of her. So yeah, very familiar with the case that this is originally based on. I do definitely still want to get to this. This is another one where multiple months I'm like, should I read it? But again, the heavy subject matter has made me put it off a little bit, but I do definitely want to get to it. And the talk that she did at the Portland Book Festival was so good. I cried during that talk. I cried during the one with Lydia Yuknavitch as well. And she was being interviewed by, oh, what's his name? Mitchell S. Jackson, whom I love, and he's often a moderator there or promoting one of his own books. He must live around Portland because he's there almost every year, but he was such an amazing moderator and asked really interesting questions that I never would have even thought to ask. He even asked like how Nightcrawling, the title, is an active verb and why she chose an active verb for the title. And she had a wonderful answer to that, basically talking about how like she wanted the story to not be over, like this is actively happening, there's no resolution, it's not complete, to kind of match that, you know, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in police reform and even police abolition, and also with her reconciling of loving Oakland and feeling so at home in Oakland, even though it's a city that has never really loved her back and has never really loved Black women the way that it should. So many good questions and answers in that talk. I absolutely loved it and can't wait to get to this. So that is Nightcrawling. And then I think the last two books are ones that I picked up in Powell's. Oh no, there's gonna be one more at the end. But the next two books I picked up at Powell's, and the first one we have here is The Harpy. This is by Megan Hunter, and this one is published by whom? I think it's published by Grove. I didn't take the sticker off on the back yet, so I'll need to do that, but this is published by Grove, and this one is about a husband and a wife. And the husband has cheated on the wife, and he basically says like, okay, in order to get even with me, you can hurt me in 3 different ways at 3 different times, then we'll be able to kind of move on from this and reconcile. And I think it gets progressively like darker and darker. I also think that this is based off of something, but I don't remember what it is, and I can't find anything about it in the back. Like, I think it's supposed to be a retelling of some myth, but who knows if that's real or not. But yeah, this one still want to get to. It is shorter, so it might be a good pick for me. And I've heard lots of other people review this, and it's kind of hit or miss with people. So I don't know where I'll land, but definitely want to get to it still. And then the next one that I got from Powell's is Split Tooth by Tanya Tagaq. And this is published by Penguin, and they are also an Indigenous author. I think they are Inuit. This is a novel about what happens when a young protagonist gets pregnant and it sort of throws her life into disarray, and she has to start navigating all of the consequences of being pregnant. I do think that this is auto-fictional. I think the author's been like open about that in the past, and again, not that that matters very much, but I think partly why she's been open about it is she wants people to know that like this situation is real and should be taken seriously, and is wanting to draw attention to the way that young girls have to survive. I do also think the formatting of this, there's like illustrations on some parts, and then I do think there's also poetry in some sections as well. Yeah. Like there's a little section there. So I'm very intrigued for this, and I've heard great things. I know And Other Stories also published this in 2023 as well. So if you're in the UK, that might be an easier one to pick up. But yeah, that is Split Tooth. I love this cover so much. I love how simple it is, but yeah, Split Tooth. And the last book that we have is another one that I have read, and it's That We May Live. This is an anthology of speculative short stories written by Chinese women. Is it just women? It might not be just women, but I know that's all speculative short stories that have been translated from the Chinese. And this is published by Two Lines Press. It's part of their Calico series. It's actually the first one that I ever bought and read from the Calico series, and really what got me very into it. I've talked about this series a lot. It might still be my favorite one that I've read from the series thus far. I'm trying to think through all of them. It might be my favorite one still. And I believe I think I picked this one up at the festival as well, because Two Lines Press always has a book at the expo, and I think I picked this one up there, and then I read it the very next month in December. It was one of my favorite short story collections of 2022 that I read, and would highly recommend it if you're into speculative short fiction. It was great. So that is That We May Live, and thank God I at least got one other book read in this book haul. So we have a lot of books that are unread for me to choose from to put on my TBR next. If you feel very strongly about what you think I should read, you put it in the comments down below. If a ton of people point me in the direction of one thing in particular, I might also add that to whichever one I pick. But here's what I'm thinking. So I know my December TBR is pretty stacked. It kind of gets crunched at the end of the year with all my goals to try and fit everything in. Plus I have a buddy read and a couple other things going on. So I kind of want something short. So that does take out some of the hardbacks and longer fiction. I think right now I'm leaning towards 4. So these are the 4 that I'm leaning towards just originally. And honestly, I think any of them would be good. But if I'm just going with like really gut instinct, I'm thinking Split Tooth. I think this is going to be the one that I go with. Please let me know if you have read this down below, and if so, what you thought of it. And this you will be seeing on my December TBR, and it is a must read for me, so we will be getting to it finally. With that, friends, thank you for watching this video, and please let me know if you bought anything either this November or last November, or if you thought anything about any of these books. Happy to hear your comments down below, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!